Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair, everybody, for those who gave and those who want to give, inshallah, and will have the opportunity to give in the future, inshallah. So I want to introduce Shaykh Umair Ahmad. I think a lot of you guys know who Umair is. If you've been in the community for long enough, you've met him. He was raised, according to his, I actually didn't know he was born in Denver, but that's news to me. Anyways, but I've always known him to be a Seattle person, and he actually was part and parcel of the community, especially on the north side in Amr Farouk area. I remember he was always helping with the youth stuff, always helping with anything that the Sheikh Abdul Majid needed, helping Murtaza, helping everybody basically, and then ended up going and becoming, helping with MSA, even though he wasn't really in the MSA at the time, and then becoming the president of MSA at Central University, Central Washington University, and then becoming, I don't think this is in the program, but he was the president of MSA Northwest for a couple years, and then he went and studied in South Africa, spent his time there. I know personally that the first couple years while he was in South Africa was difficult. He was basically sick for many weeks there, but stuck with it and really sacrificed, put in his time, mashallah, and now he's come back. And so part of what Mihraab's trying to do is, as people who grew up here and part and parcel of the community go and study, when they come back, we have to make sure that they have a place where they can affect change and where they can actually help people become better Muslims, become better community members, and also become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so in that regard, alhamdulillah, Shaykh Umair came back and he jumped into the hot seat, and now he's actually doing he's taking over the youth branch of Mihraab, which is something that's very, very, very important. How do we focus on the suhbah of our youth and dealing with our youth? So that's going to be his primary function when he's working with Mihraab and with the rest of the Mihraab officers, is how do we affect change amongst the youth. And inshallah today he's going to be talking about tolerating differences of opinions with patience. Shaykh Umair.
الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا وفي مقام آخر وأطيعوا الله ورسوله ولا تنازعوا فتفشلوا وتذهب ريحكم واصبروا إن الله مع الصابرين صدق الله العظيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for gathering us here, for granting us iman. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the bounties He's given us, and for those bounties that we have not even realized that He has bestowed upon us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our creator. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us. And we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guiding us. And we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us what He has given. And we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to praise Him and to be thankful to Him in the way that is pleasing to Him. For we are not able or capable of praising and being thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that He deserves. Now, in today's time, we seem to be at odds with each other. Everyone has a differing opinion on the way we go about our life, on the way we practice Islam. And this is something that, difference of opinion is not something that has recently crept up in the ummah. Difference of opinion is something that has always been there. We may have realized it recently because America and the Western world actually is much of a melting pot. And so what actually happened is that scholars of different opinions, they settled in different places. So you had people of the Hanafi school of thought settling in the Indo-Pak, in the subcontinent area. You had people of the Maliki madhab settling in West Africa, so on and so forth. And growing up, our parents' generation, the generations before, they weren't exposed to other opinions. So now when we've come to America and we've been diversified, we think that difference of opinion has occurred now. What I want to explain to everyone is that difference of opinion is not, there's no actual problem in difference of opinion. Difference of opinion does not pose any issues. It does not mean that we cannot get along with each other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, as we recited, وَأَعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Quran that hold fast to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all together. Meaning come together as one and hold fast to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And do not separate, do not have discord, do not have disunity. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also mentioned وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ, that obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obey His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا, and do not dispute and do not quarrel with each other. فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبُوا رِيحُكُمْ وَاصْبِرُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ, lest you lose courage, lest you lose heart with one another. And then you lose that drive, that momentum and motivation. But rather have patience, and indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those who exercise patience. So the problem, as inshallah we will speak about, is not that there is difference of opinion within the ummah and amongst the scholars and amongst the people. It is our lack of tolerance. The ulama, they highlight that there is actually difference between what we call ikhtilaf and khilaf. So ikhtilaf is difference of opinion. And ikhtilaf, as we mentioned, there is no problem with it. There's entire books that have been written on this. Scholars have written about this for many, many centuries. Recently, there's a great Syrian sheikh who resides in Medina Munawwara, Shaykh Awama, hafidhahullah. He's written an entire book called Adab al-Ikhtilaf, which means the etiquette that we are meant to have with difference of opinion. Unfortunately, I don't think it's been translated into English. Inshallah, someone will render that service to us and it will be available to all of us. But he highlights what the ulama and what the fuqaha, what the scholars of Islam have mentioned throughout time regarding difference of opinion. So he highlights that ikhtilaf is, in Arabic, the definition or the description of it would be ma yastanidu ila dalilin, that which is based on a proof from the Quran, a proof from hadith, a proof from sunnah, from ijma', from the various factions of deen where we take our knowledge from, where we take our rulings from. Whereas khilaf is ma la yastanidu ila dalilin, that which has no basis on a dalil. The two seemingly, when we look, it's a bit of an academic discussion. However, although they might sound similar, what we realize is that khilaf is something that has no basis in deen. The ulama write that this is min athar al-bid'ah, that khilaf is something that is from the effects of bid'ah, is from the effects of innovation. It doesn't hold any basis in religion. There's nothing we find in the religion that resembles what khilaf comes from. Whereas ikhtilaf is min athar al-rahmah. The ikhtilaf is actually a mercy. Ikhtilaf is actually a mercy. Now, what does that mean? That sounds odd to us. That how is ikhtilaf a mercy? So the reason it is a mercy is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not intend for all of us to have exactly the same opinion. Why? Because you have people all over the world. Islam has traveled all over the world, and that was the intention, that people of all walks of life become Muslim. And you have people of different natures. You have people of different backgrounds. You have people that have been brought up in different ways. Different people have different ways of approaching things. Different people are able to swallow different things. So if everything was exactly the same, then it would have actually made it more difficult for people to accept Islam, for people to follow the guidelines of Islam, more importantly. That things would have seemed mundane, we would have been told exactly how to do everything, whereas difference of opinion, what it has brought to us is it has allowed us to flourish. It has allowed us mentally to blossom and to exercise our minds. And then some people, they have a more rigid approach, and that's fine. They feel like they have the ability to be more rigid with themselves. Other people, we need to have a little bit more flexibility. So what these differences of opinion allow for us to do is it allows us to incorporate a greater number of people into the scope of Islam, into the scope of deen, into the scope of practice, which is allowed. Now, again, it may sound like these two are similar, but Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, who was a great companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has many virtues that have been highlighted. One particular virtue is he was known as A'lam Ba'da Khulafa Rashidin, that he was known to be the most knowledgeable of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ after the Khulafa Rashidin, after the rightly guided Khulafa, after Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, after Umar radiallahu anhu, after Uthman radiallahu anhu, after Ali radiallahu anhu. After them, he was known to be the most knowledgeable amongst the Sahaba, the most knowledgeable amongst the companions. He was a faqih, he was a qari, he was a master of the laws, and he was a master of the Quran from amongst the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he actually, coincidentally enough, he went for Hajj when Uthman radiallahu anhu was the Khalifa. When Uthman radiallahu anhu, who was the beloved son-in-law of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, twice over, he married one daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then when she passed away, he married another daughter of his. He was the leader, he was Amir al-Mu'mineen, the leader of the Muslims. And his opinion was that at a particular place, whilst you're out for Hajj, Uthman radiallahu anhu, his opinion was that the number of salawat the number of rak'ah that you should make in your salah is that of qasr, is that of a person who is traveling. He said that you should make it as that of a resident, the full salah, the full amount of rak'ah, 4 rak'ah instead of 2. And Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he was of the opinion that he said, no, Abu Bakr before him and Umar before him and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam before him, they all made their qasr salah. They all cut down the number of their rak'ah to 2 here. So why is Uthman radiallahu anhu doing this? Now, part of the reason was because Uthman radiallahu anhu, he had a home in that area, so he considered himself a resident. However, he made 4 rak'ah. And Abdullah bin Mas'ud, although he was a scholar and he was rightful to have this difference of opinion, because difference of opinion is not, it's not allowed for all of us. The layman, we're not allowed to sit back and just say, well, I disagree with you and I have a difference of opinion regarding these matters of Islam, regarding these laws of Islam. That is meant for the scholars. Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu was one of those people who was allowed this opinion. Why? Because his knowledge had reached to such heights that he was a great scholar amongst the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, despite this difference of opinion with Uthman radiallahu anhu, he made his salah behind him and he made 4 rak'ah. So the people asked him that, why have you done this? Why have you followed him despite having this ikhtilaf? So he said that some people, to the effect, he said some people think that ikhtilaf and khilaf are the same. However, he said al-khilafu sharrun. He said that khilaf is evil, khilaf is bad. So going against someone, causing that disunity, that is bad. But I had this academic opinion, and Uthman radiallahu anhu also was a great scholar amongst the Sahaba. As we mentioned, Abdullah bin Mas'ud was a'lam ba'da Khulafa Rashidin, that he was the most knowledgeable after the Khulafa Rashidin. So Uthman radiallahu anhu was known to be a scholar as well. Abdullah bin Mas'ud understood that he is a scholar, he has this opinion, and I'll follow him because he is the leader, he is the Amir and the Imam of us all. So he followed him. And he highlighted for us that there is a difference between ikhtilaf and between khilaf. So the question is that where does ikhtilaf come from? Where does difference of opinion come from? Difference of opinion comes, first and foremost, it comes from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ themselves. That they held a difference of opinion, as we highlighted in one example here. And that passed on to their students and their students, so difference of opinion will always remain. But it comes primarily because of the understanding and the interpretation of Quran and Hadith. Now, a bit of an academic discussion, which people tend to get lost here, but I wanted to highlight the complexity of such a matter. That regarding when a woman is divorced in Islam, then she has this waiting period before she is able to remarry another man. And this is called the iddah. So there is a difference of opinion, there's an ikhtilaf amongst the scholars of one methodology to another methodology as to what is the exact time frame that she is meant to wait, that waiting period, how long is that actually meant to be? So in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says regarding this, ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوء. He says that this length of time should be 3 intervals. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not say what quru means. We can translate this as an interval of time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not highlight what that interval of time is. This word, we cannot find the definition of it anywhere in the Quran, nor can we find the definition or explanation of it anywhere in Hadith either. So now what do? This is actually a proof that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed for difference of opinion and actually intended for it to occur. Why? Because that striving for knowledge, that striving for increasing our knowledge and to come to the right opinion, to make that ijtihad, that legal understanding and ruling, that is a virtue in and of itself. That is an act of worship. Again, it is not meant for the layman. It is not meant even for the lower level scholars. We think we study 5, 6, 7, 8 years. We do not reach that level of making this ijtihad and this legal analysis that is allowed here. This is for the very high level scholars in Arabic, those people that we call allama. Right? Those people have dedicated and spent their life in the path of knowledge. Those people, they went to break down this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted them to strive and give their full effort in coming to the right conclusion. And to highlight that this is not allowed for any layman is because in another example from hadith, there was a companion of the Prophet ﷺ where he needed to make his ghusl. He needed to make his ghusl one morning, but he had a wound on his head, or he needed to wash his head. And so he asked those companions that were around him that, what should I do? Should I wash it, or can I make my tayammum? What can I do? How do I go about this? Because I have a wound on my head. And those around him, they said, well, you have to wash, because that's what we know. You have to wash your whole body here. He went ahead and washed himself, but then he passed away because the water went into the wound. When Rasulullah ﷺ found out about this, when he was asked about this, he said, you are responsible for his death. That you in fact have been the ones that have caused his death. You are the ones that have killed him. So, and then Rasulullah ﷺ tells them that, why did you not ask the people if you did not know? These people gave him an answer. Yet Rasulullah ﷺ said, you did not know. You should have asked who? Those people who would know. Those people of knowledge. So this is an example that we have to ask the people of knowledge if we don't know. Not if we think we know, but if we don't know, we have to be honest with ourselves. So getting back to the point, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not define what this word quru means. Abdullah bin Mas'ud, again, radiallahu anhu, he was of the opinion that it means 3 periods of the cycle of a woman that she has monthly. That when 3 of those pass, then her waiting period is finished. And Zayd bin Thabit, radiallahu anhu, another great companion of the Prophet ﷺ, he was of the opinion that no, it is that time between the 2 cycles, what we call tuhur, that time of purity when she's not in her cycle. That when 3 of those pass, then that is what will denote the ending of her waiting period before she can remarry. So that was an opinion of the Sahaba. Now Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah in his respective school, they highlight the reason behind Abdullah bin Mas'ud's opinion. And Imam Shafi rahimahullah and his students, they highlight the reasons for Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu's opinion. So bear with me here. But the reason for that, the reason for this difference of opinion is because quru, again, has not been defined. So Imam Abu Hanifa said, okay, the word thalatha here, which means 3, this is a word that is khas. This is a word that is specific and it is meant to be fulfilled in its entirety, in its perfect amount. That whatever that time period is, it has to be exactly 3. Not 2.5, not 3.5, not 3.1, not 2.9, but exactly 3. It has to be a perfect interval of 3, whatever that is. So he said that can only occur when the period of her cycle is taken into consideration. Because once she is divorced, then 1 cycle will pass, and a 2nd cycle and a 3rd cycle, and then you have 3 exact. And if we say that it is the time of purity, well, not exactly 3 intervals will not pass. Why? Because her divorce is given in the period of purity. That purity, the Shafi school has counted to be 1. However, the school of Imam Abu Hanifa says, no, that's not actually a full interval, because you're starting it halfway or a quarter of the way or a tenth of the way into the time of purity. Imam Shafi rahimahullah, he says no. That the grammatical, what does the word quru mean here? That's what they're trying to define. So Imam Shafi looks at the Arabic grammar rule, and he says that when the word 3, when the number that is mentioned, when the number that is mentioned has a feminine form, which in this case it does, it has the round ta, the ta marbuta we call, at the end of a word, then whatever thing it is counting, which is the intervals of time, has to have the opposite gender. So the word 3 here is in its feminine form. The thing that is describing should be something that's masculine. So the cycle, because it's only something that is attributed to women, then, or is only a matter of women, that word is a feminine word. Whereas the tuhur, the time of purity, is a masculine form. It is a masculine word. And we know in the different languages, foreign languages, English not so much, but different languages, every word is masculine or feminine. So Imam Shafi says it has to mean a period of tuhur, it has to mean a time of purity. Why? Because of the grammar rule of Arabic. So again, a bit of an academic discussion. Now I look at it, we look at it, what's correct? What's correct? How do we know what to follow? We can't make heads or tails from this. We may understand the two examples, but to really sit down and say, no, this is right and this is wrong, that's a very difficult task because it has not been explained in Quran nor Hadith. So what do? We follow the different schools. And we don't mix and match because that would cause confusion. That would cause difficulty because then at one time you may follow one rule and then you change the rule at another time. So we stick to one school of thought. However, that difference of opinion is there and it doesn't cause any harm to the ummah. It doesn't cause any disunity. I wanted to give this example so that we would understand the complexity of such matters. That things are not so simple. Even though, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that He has intended ease for us and not difficulty. However, that doesn't mean that whatever is difficult, you can just leave it out without any fear of consequences and you always just do what is easy. Because what happens, I've actually had people say to me, eating halal food is difficult, so why do you do it? SubhanAllah, if eating halal food is difficult, now we try to apply this intention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make things easy for us and we say, well, we don't have to do it anymore. So that means that if Salatul Fajr is difficult for me, then I no longer have to do it because it's difficult for me. But that's not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended with this, when He said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intends ease for us and not difficulty. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended here with this verse was matters of, for example, tayammum. That past nations, when they had to go for their acts of worship, they had to make some type of ablution. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that if we don't have water, He has allowed us to use sand to purify ourselves. That past nations, when they wanted to make their acts of worship, they had to go to their houses of worship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, no, I've made the entire earth a place of worship for you. So you can make your salah anywhere. You can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anywhere. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has intended by intending ease for us and not difficulty for us. So Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Shafi highlight this difference of opinion, which comes because of their different understanding and their different interpretation of Quran and of Hadith. Now the next question that we have, common question, does difference of opinion cause disunity? Does it mean disunity? The answer to this is no, despite what many of us feel. Why? This can be highlighted in another example from the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he sent the Sahaba, he sent his companions to Banu Qurayza. He sent his companions to this tribe, and he told his companions that make your Salatul Asr when you get there. Make your Salatul Asr when you get there. Now what happened is they became delayed in their travel, and half of the companions of that group, they said, well, Salatul Asr, the time for Asr is running out. We have to make our Salah. We can't let the time run out. So they made their Salatul Asr on the way. The other group of companions said, no, but the Prophet ﷺ, he told us to make our Salah when we get there. So that's what we have to follow. The first group, they said, no, he only said that so that we would speed up in our travel, so that we would make haste and not lag behind. But he didn't intend for us to let the time of Salah go out. So the Sahaba had this difference of opinion. Now we know that from the Sunnah is that when you have a group of people that are traveling, that one person should be chosen as the Amir of the group, the person who has the final say. So this person, obviously there was an Amir there and Rasulullah ﷺ had set an Amir aside. When they came back to the Prophet ﷺ, they told him what happened. Rasulullah ﷺ did not accuse them of disunity. He did not rebuke them and say, no, you disunited, you caused discord. Despite, obviously, the Amir of the group, the leader of the group, he made his Salah with one group and not with the other. And part of the group, they made their Salah at another time. Rasulullah ﷺ did not accuse them of disunity. What happened? They each had their opinion, they each followed their opinion, they asked the scholars who were amongst them, and they acted however they thought best, however they interpreted the hadith and the direct command of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not tell them that no, you have caused disunity. Another example that we can see throughout the history of the ummah, in Egypt and in many other places, there are certain masajid that if you go there, you will find the general room where everyone is making their salah, where the jama'ah will stand, and you'll have like 4 squares. So imagine a square and imagine 4 squares around it. there was a time when each of the four madhahib were being taught in those different areas, those four different squares. It was designed and built that way. Each madhab taught their respective students at that time. And then what happened is when the time of salah came, they would all stand and make their salah together in one jama'ah. So this is another example that the madhahib have always existed. The different methodologies and different schools of thought, different interpretations of the ahkam and the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were taught at the same time. However, there was no disunity. They got up and they made their salah together. This is a proof of unity in the ummah, not disunity in the ummah. Despite having what? Ikhtilaf. They had ikhtilaf, they did not have khilaf, as we highlighted the reasons and definitions for the two earlier. So we find that difference of opinion is not the problem. The intolerance is the problem. Imam Qastalani rahimahullah, who died in, I believe, 922 or 923, he said that from the khususiyat of this ummah, that from the specialities of this nation, of the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that ijma'uhum hujjah, that their consensus is a proof over all of humanity. Why? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that my ummah will never have consensus on one opinion except that it is correct. So if the ummah reaches consensus, and this is consensus of the scholars, because not every difference of opinion not everyone's different opinion is a valid difference of opinion. So the consensus of the scholars is a hujjah. And he said, وَإِخْتِلَافُهُمْ رَحْمَةٌ, that difference of opinion amongst them is a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we highlighted earlier, it is a mercy. Why? Because we have different flavors of people, different people from different walks of life, different backgrounds. What we have to strive for is to have tolerance with each other. That know that there are different methods of doing things. There are different ways to interpret the deen, and the scholars have done that. The Sahaba did that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught certain things to certain Sahaba, certain companions of his, and he sent them out to become governors in different lands. They taught what they knew from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He taught other companions something, maybe some ahkam had changed, maybe some rulings had changed. And he sent those companions with the changes that had been made. And so this difference of opinion came. This difference of opinion came about later on. But more so, it was because of how they understood and interpreted the hadith and the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can take a look at the majlis of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. That he was in Iraq, and which was the center of learning. It was the capital of the Muslim world, which was the most powerful nation on earth at that time. The strongest and most vast empire at that time. And what happened? Imam Abu Hanifa's majlis, there were in some instances 40 scholars, and in other instances 70 scholars that would be sitting in that gathering. And they would discuss and debate different rulings of the deen. They would discuss and debate these different rulings. Yet, although these differences of opinion were discussed and debated amongst them, people who are not sitting in that gathering, but were sitting in another part, in the same room, but somewhere further away from them, could not even hear clearly what they were saying. With such softness, they were addressing each other. They kept their voice so low. They didn't yell at each other. They didn't call each other names. And then they discussed, they debated, and then they came back the next day. They went on to the next ruling, or they continued discussing. They discussed all the hadith, all the ayat. They discussed the different tafasir, the different meanings, aqaid, everything. And then they came to their conclusion. But the key thing that we have to take from here, this legacy that we have to take from them, is their tolerance with each other. They did not raise their voice and resort to name calling. Another example that we have is that of Imam Malik and Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahumullah. That these two scholars were mountains of knowledge. I think we could not even fathom what depths they had reached their knowledge with. You know, when you go, I was in South Africa and I studied for about 6 years there. It's interesting, it's a study that the students sort of do, like a statistic, a little psychology test. Where the older, maybe the 4th and 5th year students who are coming to the end of their studies, they will ask any question to a 1st year student or a 2nd year student who is at the beginning of his studies. Any question, a simple question or a complex question. They'll ask it to a group actually. And the first people to answer the question, to shout out an answer, are the 1st and 2nd year students. Because at that point, they think they know everything. The last people to answer the question are the people that are in their final year of study, or those people who are doing their iftah studies, their mufti courses. Those are the last people to answer. They sit and they think and they say, let me get back to you, I'll go look it up. They realize how vast knowledge is. the depths and the mountains of ilm that is in front of us. So Imam Malik and Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahumullah, they were probably the two most knowledgeable people alive on the earth at that time. And they had a difference of opinion. Imam Malik rahimahullah was in Medina Munawwara, and Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was in Iraq. Imam Malik disagreed with the way that Imam Abu Hanifa answered his questions, that he entertained hypothetical and theoretical situations. When the two of them met, then Imam Malik asked him, why do you do this? So Imam Abu Hanifa explained to him, he said, look, you are in Medina Munawwara, you are in the city of the Prophet ﷺ. You are living with the children of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Deen is strong here, Iman is complete, the people are ready to obey everything people are ready to obey and practice the way Islam has been meant to be practiced. There's no problem here. He said, but I'm in Iraq. We're at the borders of the Islamic Empire. People are entering Islam by the thousands and millions over there. And people are bringing their cultural baggage, people are bringing their religious baggage from their other religions that they're converting from. They're bringing that into their practices of Islam. So I have to entertain their hypothetical and theoretical situations and their questions, because I'm living in a different context and a different environment than you. So I have to approach these people in a different way than you have to approach these people. So again we see here that their ikhtilaf was a rahmah, was a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Malik understood. And Imam Malik, he understood, and even though he respectfully disagreed with him, but he understood his context. And they will begin praising each other after that. Imam Malik rahimahullah, on one occasion Imam Abu Hanifa entered into Medina Munawwara, and Imam Malik, he was a man that aside for Hajj or Umrah, he never left Medina Munawwara because he did not want to die outside the city of the Prophet ﷺ. So Imam Abu Hanifa walked by him one day, he greeted him, and Imam Abu Hanifa went on. Imam Malik rahimahullah then asked the person sitting next to him, he said, do you know who that was? The man said, no, I don't. He said, that was such a man that had he wanted to convince you that this stone pillar that we are leaning against was made of gold, he would have been able to do it. His intellect has reached such a high level. Nu'man bin Thabit, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. They had great respect for each other. They had great tolerance for each other. Other examples of tolerance is that Imam Malik rahimahullah, once by the Khalifa, by the leader of the Muslims in his time, he was given a proposition that his book was read, the Muwatta of Imam Malik rahimahullah, his fiqh were considered, and the Khalifa said to him that, write this book, allow us to distribute this amongst the entire ummah, amongst the entire empire, and we will make your school of thought the sole reigning school of thought across the entire Muslim land. That's what I want to do. That was the proposition that he gave to Imam Malik rahimahullah. Imam Malik said to him, he said, no, take this for yourself, make practice on this for yourself, but let people be on the understanding of religion that they have. Again, the important thing I want to highlight here is not just any understanding, not just anything we feel we understand, or any hukam, any fatwa we want to give when we are not capable or have the knowledge base of giving that fatwa, but let them follow their scholars. Let them stay in accordance to the scholars and what the scholars of their land have taught them. Because there is a different context. People have different contexts and people have different environments. And that's what's going to happen when people are in different contexts and different environments. So Imam Malik rahimahullah showed this tolerance. That was an example from our pious predecessors, our Salafus Salihin. More recently, Shaykh Umair Ahmad, hafidhahullah, he writes in this book that I mentioned earlier, that in the last century there were two great scholars in Egypt, by the names of Mustafa al-Sabari and Allama al-Kawthari. And the two of them were on a greater council of ulama, of scholars in Egypt. And this council consisted of many, many scholars. You could say Mustafa al-Sabari, rahimahullah, was you could say the Amir of this council, the head of this council. And Allama al-Kawthari, rahimahullah, was his naib, his deputy, basically. So they were sitting with scholars that were on this great council, and two of them were mountains of knowledge themselves. At a point in their life came where they had this difference of opinion regarding matters of aqeedah, regarding matters of our belief. Now, aqeedah is something that is extremely important, because if our aqeedah is incorrect, then all the practice and amal that we make will be useless and will be futile. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will turn our amal into dust and let it blow away on Yawm al-Qiyamah if our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not correct. So, without going into the depths of what that difference was exactly, they had this difference of opinion regarding a matter of aqidah. And they wrote book after book after book in refutation of each other's opinions. In one instance, Mustafa Sabri rahimahullah, he mentioned Allama al-Kawthari by name in his book when he was refuting Allama al-Kawthari's opinion. In response to that, Allama al-Kawthari, he said that I am honored that such a great scholar like Mustafa Sabri has mentioned me and permanently kept my name in his books, and now I will be remembered for the rest of time. He has honored me by mentioning my name. It is mentioned that when the two of them would meet, despite this long ikhtilaf that went on, and again, book after book, risala after risala was written against each other's opinions. When they would meet each other, they would meet each other with such softness, with such gentleness, with such love. It was as though they were brothers. It was as though they were long lost friends coming together with such joy that you meet each other. You would never imagine that these were the same people that had this ikhtilaf on a matter of aqidah. What is this? This is softness, this is gentleness, this is tolerance that they had for each other. Now, what type of tolerance should we have? As we mentioned, we cannot sit and tolerate absolutely everything, because there are certain things that go outside and beyond the scope of Sharia. So for example, if someone comes and claims that a man is a prophet or a messenger after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we cannot tolerate that. They claim prophethood after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they say, no, we are also Muslim, and this is considered, we're still within the fold of Islam despite having this view. No, we will not tolerate that. We will not say, okay, that's your difference of opinion. Even if you are a scholar, that is something that is completely beyond the scope of Sharia. We will not tolerate that and say, okay, we'll still consider you within the fold of Islam. However, there's a difference between tolerance and respect. Although we won't tolerate that opinion, that doesn't mean we get up and we disrespect them. That doesn't mean that we humiliate them. No, we have an academic difference with them. We outline the boundary that Sharia has made for us in our belief system, and we say if you do not have this, then respectfully you're outside the fold of Islam, but that doesn't mean you will be violent with them. And this is the actual problem with intolerance. That intolerance, this is where it leads. It leads to an empowering of the nafs. It leads to an empowering of our lower selves, and that love for fame, where we have intolerance with each other, and then we can see what's happening on an international level, where people have intolerance, and then we can see the havoc and chaos that is being wreaked across specifically the Muslim lands. Why? Because it's a result of intolerance, where people then think themselves justified in shedding the blood of innocent people, Muslims and non-Muslims alike. That's the extreme that you go when you have intolerance for each other. We think we have a difference of opinion with someone now, or we are intolerant of someone on this level now in Seattle, for example. We will never reach that level, but our mashayikh, our ulama, they have outlined for us that this degradation is a slow and steady path of digression. That you will not be intolerant of a person. Like if I'm intolerant of Shaykh Qasim, for example, today, I will not tomorrow all of a sudden become extreme against him. But slowly, shaitan will come to us, and unfortunately, that intolerance will, for lack of a better word, blossom, because it's not blossoming is something that is beautiful, but it will turn into something that is extreme. And then we will begin to hate each other, and then we will have disunity. The ummah has always had ikhtilaf, but they did not have disunity amongst each other. So we have to be very careful in catching our lower selves. We have to be careful in catching our lower selves and stepping on our nafs and admitting when we are wrong, admitting when the truth has been manifested on another's tongue. Shaykh Maulana, his name is slipping from my mind, it's Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi, rahimahullah, who was a great foundation of the ulama of Hind. When his students would come to him, then he would tell them that the first thing I want you to do is I want you to make tawbah, I want you to repent from ever going into debates again. The people asked him why. He said, because the time of debate is over. The time of debate where people were actually looking to come to the truth and coming and manifesting the truth, that has ended. That was in the time of Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik rahimahumullah. That was in the time of Imam Shafi rahimahullah, who Imam Shafi rahimahullah said that he would make dua when he would go into debate, that Allah Ta'ala manifest the truth on his opponent's tongue. With such sincerity he would enter into these debates, not to humiliate someone else, not to show that I have more knowledge than someone else, no, so that I can see how you're thinking, I can see how you are deducing, and we can come to the truth. He desired and hoped for the truth to be manifested on the tongue of his opponent. Mawlana Ashraf Ali Thanvi rahimullah, he said that time is over. Now we're only debating to empower ourselves, to empower our nafs, so that we can humiliate others and bring others down. We're not concerned with furthering our own knowledge, but we are rather concerned with humiliating and degrading other people. So he would make his students make tawbah from debate and say, vow to me that you will not go into debate again. Time is short. I'd like to mention, as we've mentioned, the different people of the past and the tolerance that they have had for one another. One legacy that we can take is that of Hassan radiallahu anhu, the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the son of Ali and Fatima radiallahu anhuma, that when he became of age, when he became an adult, and Ali radiallahu anhu had been killed, and the Khilafah, the power of leadership, had passed to Hassan radiallahu anhu. And Hassan radiallahu anhu, he looked at this misunderstanding and this dispute that occurred between Ali radiallahu anhu, who was his father, and another great Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Amir Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. And they had this dispute and this misunderstanding. Hassan radiallahu anhu, he sought to fulfill the prophecy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he took Hassan radiallahu anhu when he was a child on his lap, and he said, I have hope that this son of mine will bring two great groups together and unite them. Hassan radiallahu anhu, he looked at this great dispute that happened between Amir Muawiyah radiallahu anhu and his father Ali radiallahu anhu. And when he became the Khalifa and Amir al-Mu'mineen, what did he do? What did he say? He said, I will seek to fulfill that prophecy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I passed my leadership, I give up my leadership to Amir Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. I give up my leadership to the very man that was disputing against my own father. What do we do? What do we do? Not even for our father, for someone who we've never met, for someone who we know very little about, we size up two different people, we think we understand everything, and we begin taking sides and we begin hurling insults and degrading other people. We go on to violence and humiliating those people who are Muslims amongst us, those people who may have a difference of opinion. We begin insulting them. We begin making takfir of them, accusing them of kufr, accusing them of having disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of an academic difference. An academic difference which does not even cause the cause of someone's kufr and someone's disbelief. But Hassan radiallahu anhu, he understood the reality. He stepped on his nafs. Who would not want power? This was the most powerful empire at that time. Another example was between Ali and Muawiyah radiallahu anhuma, where the Roman emperor, he sent a message to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, and he said that you are disputing with this companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I will aid you in your dispute. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, despite his dispute with Ali radiallahu anhu, he wrote a letter back in response to the emperor of Rome, and he said, what? He said, don't you dare get involved in our affairs. If you get involved, then I will send you a group with one of us at the tail and one of us at the head. That this is between us, we will handle this. But as far as the rest of the ummah goes, we are united, we are one. We understand what is truly important. And that was a great dispute that they were having. So Hassan radiallahu anhu, despite all of that, he gave up power. We are not willing to give up power of a small halaqah that we have. We're having a halaqah and someone else comes and wants to take part, and we say, no. We shun them from the masjid. Someone else is called in to give a khutbah, and all of a sudden we begin shunning them from the masjid, and we begin spreading rumors and slandering them and saying, no, they don't belong, this and that. For something small, we're not willing to step on our nafs and giving up a little bit of that fame and that power. But Hassan radiallahu anhu, he stood up and fulfilled the prophecy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he gave up his leadership. He gave up his leadership. So what is it that we have to do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has outlined this in the Quran, where He has said, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا, that the servants, the worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of the most merciful, of Rahman, they are those who walk on the earth humbly, hawnan, humbly. They walk on the earth, not proudly, not sticking out their chest. They walk on the earth. وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا, that they walk on the earth, and when the ignorant come to them and oppose them, and when the ignorant come and speak to them, what do the worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? They say salama. They just give their salam and they move on. They don't even sit and discuss because people are ignorant, and they won't even understand what they are arguing about. So that is the approach that we have to take. This is the reality and the legacy that Hassan radiallahu anhu, that the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, that our pious predecessors, this is the legacy that they have left us. This is the legacy that we have to inherit, and this is the legacy that we have to pass on. That difference of opinion occurs, let the scholars have their academic difference of opinion. We follow whoever we feel comfortable in following. We pick that one person who we feel comfortable in following, and we follow them. We don't go fatwa shopping, but we have that unity amongst each other. We have that unity amongst ourselves. We have to remember, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, that we will stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, وَمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَىٰ. That those who fear the standing before the Rabb, the standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what? وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. And those who deny their lower selves what it wants. Those who deny their lower selves what it wants, those are the people who their abode will be Jannah. So this is the legacy that we have to inherit from our pious predecessors. This is where, if we inherit this legacy, then we can move on and progress as a nation and a people and people of this society. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the tawfiq. Anything correct that was mentioned, anything good that was said was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are undeserving of even being up here. Any inaccuracy or anything in error that was mentioned was only from my own shortcomings. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.